What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So a couple of weeks ago, I made a video essay talking about the Washington Capitals and how no team had drastically changed their both current and future over the last 12 months than the Washington Capitals. They went from being a pretty mid team that was kind of trekking towards an eventual rebuild to now looking like they can be a sustainable high-level team in the Eastern Conference for maybe even a decade, at least the next 5 seasons. And I think on the flip side of things, no team has had a worse 12 months going from a potential contender for the next 5 to 10 years to now being just completely average and in disarray than the Vancouver Canucks. So we're going to dive into what has happened the last 12 months for this team and why they are in such a bad situation as they are right now. So let's get into it. Because 12 months ago, heading into the All-Star break, the Vancouver Canucks were 31-11-5, first in the Pacific Division by 7 points, first in the Western Conference by 4 points, and tied for the NHL lead in points for the President's Trophy with the Boston Bruins. Everything in Vancouver was euphoric up until that point. Because their core was balling out. Basically, everybody was on pace for a career season, starting, of course, with Quinn Hughes, who was the Norris favorite at the time, and eventually did go on to win it with 62 points in 49 games before the All-Star break. Thatcher Demko was the co-favorite with Connor Hellebuck for the Vezina, having a 26-8-1 record with a 920. JT Miller had 67 points. He would eventually finish with 103. Pettersson, 27 goals, 37 assists, 64 points. Brock Besser was getting back on track. Monster goal-scoring season with 30 goals, 22 assists, and 52 points. And in his first full season with the team, Filip Hronek had 36 points in 49 games. Their entire core outside of JT Miller was between the ages of 24 to 27, and all of them looked like elite or superstar guys. You thought in Vancouver they were truly going to be contenders for at least the next 5 seasons, and rightfully so. Like, they were PDO merchants to a degree. They had a 104% PDO at the time. For those who don't know what PDO is, it's basically the combination of your save percentage and shooting percentage. League average is 100%. A very high mark for a season is 102. So it wasn't sustainable what they were doing this season, but they were on pace for like 115, 116 points. You thought, given their core, they didn't really have any clear identifiable holes. That maybe not the perennial number 1 team in the Western Conference like they were in that regular season before the All-Star break, but you thought they were going to be a serious threat alongside Colorado, alongside Dallas and Edmonton for the foreseeable future. Then, right before the All-Star game on January 31st, despite this being this core's real first monster season, yes, they made the second round in the COVID playoffs, Patrick Allvin goes out and gets arguably the top deadline target of the cycle in Elias Lindholm. They gave up at the time a decent amount. Hunter Brustevich, who was tearing up the OHL, as well as a first-round pick in 2024. Andrei Kuzmenko, who's kind of like a salary dump considering he was making $5.5 million. A 4th-round pick in Yoni Urmo. And that was a sizable price for the Vancouver Canucks, considering Lindholm had kind of been on the slide since that 2022 magical season, centering Kachuk and Gaudreau in their 100-point seasons. He only had 32 points in 49 games, but even if you didn't like Lindholm that much, you didn't think he was a number 1 center like I did, you thought he could come in and be a very effective middle sixer, considering he would not be garnering the attention that he did in Calgary in Vancouver. But after this trade, the first real big bombshell of the 2024 trade deadline, the Canucks were, if not already, viewed as a serious threat in the Western Conference. They had 6 All-Stars at that 2024 All-Star game, and they had respectable cup odds coming in at 15-1. They had serious expectations now. After the All-Star break, they were a little bit inconsistent, going 4-1-1, then 1-5-1, up and down. And then on March 3rd, they got some good news while they were kind of on a skid, as Elias signed an 8-year deal at $11.6 million. Pettersson, while in the month leading up to that extension, wasn't really playing to the level that we know that he's capable of, only having 14 points in 16 games. Everybody agreed that this was at least a solid deal. I'm not going to say some revisionist history on this. Pettersson was coming off a 100-point season. Still, that season was on pace, even when he signed the deal, for like 90, 95 points, and obviously had the upside of a two-way guy, Selke-level guy. Everybody agreed that this was a pretty solid and fair market value for a guy that's only 25 years old. After that Pettersson deal was signed, they went on a little bit of a heater, winning 4 straight games, but in that 4th game, Thatcher Demko goes down with a knee injury. But there's no reason to be massively concerned quite yet. It's deemed only a 2 to 4 week injury, and at that point, the Canucks had basically locked up a playoff spot in home ice in the first round. So yeah, nobody was panicking. Thatcher Demko, take as much time as you need. Miss the rest of the regular season or come back just for a couple of games. We don't need you. We just need your health in the playoffs. The Canucks did kind of hobble the rest of the way, going only 8-6-2. Demko did appear in 2 games at the end of the regular season, and the Canucks won their first division since 2013, a massively successful regular season. And then it was time for the Nashville Predators, and Thatcher Demko started game 1 for the Vancouver Canucks, but then yet again re-aggravated some kind of injury, and he did not play for the rest of the playoffs. They would go on to beat the Nashville Predators in 6 games, making it a massive success of a season, considering going up against the Edmonton Oilers. At the time, they thought maybe Demko would return, but heading into that series, there wasn't a ton of expectations. They were decent underdogs. But despite not having Thatcher Demko in that series and Brock Besser being ruled out just before Game 7, they went to 7 games with the Edmonton Oilers that eventually made Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, only losing by 1 goal. So if anything, that kind of promoted optimism for Vancouver Canucks fans, considering Shilovs was so good on that playoff run. If they had Thatcher Demko, maybe things would be different. It was still a lot of optimism following the playoff exit, even though it stinks to lose to Edmonton. Also, it appeared during that playoff run that Pettersson was dealing with some kind of injury, just didn't look like himself. So them fully healthy, fully rejuvenated next season, you expected more of the same. The offseason really gets underway for the Vancouver Canucks in mid-June when they signed Filip Hronek to an 8-year deal at $7.25 million. Pretty fair market value for a 25-year-old top pair right-handed defenseman. Perfectly fine deal, in my opinion. Some people are probably going to pick it apart. You would have loved to get him maybe a $500,000 less, but 7.25 with the cap going up, perfectly fine. Then Alvin makes a smart move, dumping Ilya Mikheyev's contract to the Chicago Blackhawks, only moving from a 2nd-round pick to a 4th-round pick. They did retain $700,000, but this was massive to keep some of the core around. With that cap that they just got back, they ended up signing Teddy Blueger to a 2-year deal at $1.6 million. Tyler Myers, who was overpaid in prior years, but still a pretty effective second-pair guy, to a 3x3, as well as Dakota Joshua, who's amazing for them in a bottom 6 role, to a 3-year deal at $3.25. In the draft, they did not have a single top 90 pick, so I can't really analyze that. Maybe one of their late round picks turned into something, but it was not some pivotal offseason in terms of the draft for the Canucks. In unrestricted free agency, they decide we're not going to massively overpay to keep Lindholm and Zadorov. The Boston Bruins can go do that themselves. They get a 7-year deal, $7.75 for Lindholm, 6-year deal at $5 million for Zadorov. Definitely going to leave holes in the lineup, but again, not worth it for that cap hit or that term. Instead, they opt for more smaller moves. Jake DeBrusk was the biggest one, 7 years, $5.5 million. He's been playing pretty good for them. Danton Heinen, 2 years, $2.5. Vinny Desharnais, 2 years, $2 million. That was a kind of shit deal. And Kiefer Sherwood has been a really good ad at 2 years, $1.5 mil. In terms of their remaining restricted free agents, they signed Podkolzin to a 2-year deal at $1 million. We'll get back to him very shortly, as well as Artur Shilov's 2 years, $850,000, in hopes that he can be the backup or the 1B if Demko goes down next season. Then they ship out Podkolzin like a month later, and that is not really looking that good. They only got a 4th-round pick back, and Podkolzin has been an effective middle 6, bottom 6, 2-way, more so defensive guy for the Edmonton Oilers, only making $1 million. Not a fan of that move, but Podkolzin he just didn't work out in Vancouver. I don't blame them for that. Then in September, a little bit of a head-scratching move happens as Kevin Lankinen is signed by the Vancouver Canucks. And not that that's some bad deal. They signed him for basically nothing for 1 year, but you thought Thatcher Demko was going to be ready to go and Shilovs was going to be the backup. So this put serious doubt that Thatcher Demko will be fully healthy for the regular season. Still, coming into the season, they had very high expectations, both by their own team as well as outsiders thought they were going to be pretty good. Their points over under was set at 99.5. They had 22-1 cup odds, as well as most people just having them penciled into the playoffs. They were viewed as a top 7-11 team in the NHL. The site The Athletic really liked that team. They had them at a 96% playoff percentage, which was second highest in the entire NHL, as well as the 3rd best cup odds at 9% as well. So the underlying numbers were decently high in this team as well. However, getting back to the status of Thatcher Demko, on September 19th, he comes out and says that he's uncertain if he's going to be ready to go to start the season. And this was after an Elliot Friedman report that Thatcher Demko, his injury is something that he can't have surgery on, or surgery won't properly fix it. It's just something that he's going to have to work through. That is definitely concerning. But hey, Demko doesn't start the season with the team, and it doesn't matter because Kevin Lankinen starts 7-0-1 with a .925 save percentage as the Canucks are safely in a playoff spot, and Quinn Hughes is proving that last year was no fluke. They're rolling, they're fine, and it's only going to be a plus once Demko gets back. However, the Canucks would lose 3 out of their next 5 games, and then it was a shock across the hockey world when JT Miller was announced that he was taking a personal leave of absence for personal reasons. At the time, rightfully so, nobody really wanted to speculate on why he was taking this leave of absence, but now 2 months later, as the dust has settled and there's been more beef in Vancouver, there was some type of confrontation between Miller and someone else after he was benched, and then he went on this leave of absence. The Canucks would go 5-3-2 without Miller, but Philip Hronek would go down with an 8-week injury during that stretch. Thatcher Demko would return on December 10th, but it wasn't 2023-2024 Thatcher Demko. He has been brutal for them this season, going 3-5-3 with an .867 and minus 5.5 goals saved above expected. His knee injury is still clearly lingering and is affecting his agility to a degree. And as for youngster Artur Shilovs, who Canucks fans thought were going to be potentially their goalie of the future and one of the best goalie prospects in hockey, he was even worse in his 7 NHL games, posting an .847 and -9 goals saved above expected. He has gone back down to the AHL where he's playing better, but still only a pedestrian .906 in 9 games. His hype has really died down. But back to the Vancouver Canucks. JT Miller is back with the team, and they go 7-9-5 over the next 21 games. About 3 weeks ago, the rumors start to really come out about some type of rift between Pettersson and Miller. They deny. There was this interview with Miller after a game when he was like, I can bring Pettersson out here and we can talk about it. There's no validity to these rumors, but obviously insiders are getting information and saying that it is true to a degree. And I mean, it's not rocket science to see, even without the post-game interviews, that there's some type of rift. Both players are playing extremely bad relative to the prior season. JT Miller has just 9 goals, 34 points in 39 games. Compare that to last year, 103 points. He's only on pace for 71 points. Yes, he is 32 years old, but I refuse to believe that he fell off almost 30-point pace, over 30-point pace in just one offseason. As for Elias Pettersson this season, he just has 11 goals, 20 assists, 31 points in 43 games after the last 2 seasons, putting up 37 goal, 60 assist, 97-point pace while being awesome defensively. And he's only 26 years old. There's no age regression going on with Elias Pettersson. It just seems all mental and in terms of chemistry on the ice. They both just look disengaged out there, not giving their all every single play like maybe we saw last year when they were really humming. Clearly something is happening. And then on Tuesday, Jim Rutherford in an interview just fully laid it all out that there is some kind of rift in this core, might be getting blown up soon. In regards to whether the Miller-Pettersson drama has affected the entire team, he said, yes. Yup. He also stated that it certainly appears like there's not a good solution that would keep this group together. Teams probably already knew this behind the scenes, but for him to go on interview with the journalist and just straight up say this and confirm all of our suspicions, absolutely wild. And it's just funny because they were vehemently denying it 3 weeks ago. So Pettersson and Miller clearly don't like each other. We don't know what exactly happened before that leave of absence, but one can maybe assume that it was something regarding the two of them. But it is just weird considering the fact Pettersson signed that 8-year, $11.6 million just last spring. Clearly the beef wasn't that bad then, but I guess winning does cure all. There was certain periods of down locker rooms in Vancouver, the end of the Travis Green era, the end of the Bruce Boudreau era, but there was never direct reports of Miller and Pettersson getting into it. And let me just say, I don't think that this horrible stretch of Vancouver Canucks hockey is solely on Pettersson and Miller. Clearly, the entire locker room to some degree is pretty dysfunctional given the effort that we're seeing on the ice from the team. But at least for Miller and Pettersson, it seems to be some kind of oil and water, like hot-headed JT Miller that is very passionate versus Elias Pettersson, much more quiet, nonchalant, if you will. They just seem to not work together as a duo. So now you look at the Vancouver Canucks, and because of all this dysfunction, they're out of the playoffs. Yes, they're only out of the playoffs by 1 spot, but that's compared to a Calgary Flames team that they should at the bare minimum right now be like 6 points ahead of, given the differences in talent. It has just been so underwhelming. Yes, they could potentially make the playoffs this season, but they would get absolutely killed in the first round with the way that they're playing. The goaltending outside of Kevin Lankinen's amazing first month has been shit. The defense core, besides Quinn Hughes and Philip Hronik when he's played, has been brutal. And the forward core has this team bottom 10 in goals for per game. They don't have a single guy above 40 points right now. Yes, part of that is because of injuries and leaves of absence, but they have been so underwhelming compared to last year's monster seasons. The Demko thing, you can't blame Vancouver for that. You can't blame management or ownership for that. That is just something freak that he has to hopefully overcome. Injuries happen, but when looking at the way that this blue line was constructed outside of their top pair, abysmal, horrible. The effort night in and night out that Rick Tocchet is getting out of these guys, unacceptable, simply unacceptable. And the fact that this locker room has massively collapsed, it falls on everybody. It falls on everybody within this organization. So now they need a trade. They badly, badly need the trade, especially after these Rutherford public comments. Somebody is getting traded, and I am still on the camp of trade JT Miller, maybe trade Brock Besser and kind of try to retool with those picks. I don't think you can trade Elias Pettersson. Elias Pettersson at his best is a top 15 player in the entire NHL. Yes, he's on a big contract, but if he turns it around, he can be the best forward on a Stanley Cup winning team. And if they trade him, they're not getting anything remotely close to that. You're going to get a good second line center in picks. It's not going to be enough. You're basically punting on this entire core. If you trade the guy with your highest offensive ceiling and you don't have someone in the farm system, you're not going to get a top 5 pick this year to potentially replace him and pair with Quinn Hughes. First, JT Miller appears to be more of the hot-headed guy. You can maybe get some younger pieces that are more fit alongside with your core, alongside Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson, and he is making $8 million till like 37, 38 years old. So this contract, even though it maybe isn't horrible right now, probably is going to age bad. So yeah, I think it makes sense to trade JT Miller, get a young player, young roster player, as well as picks. Go out, trade Brock Besser maybe if he wants some kind of 8-year, $8.5 million contract, and have 2 first-round picks this year. Your own first pick's probably going to be top 12 if you trade those 2 guys, and have a little retool around Pettersson and Hughes. I think that is the way to go. Goaltending future is horrible. Considering the Demko injury, it's very scary. I understand that. But I think you keep the Pettersson-Hughes combo together. Those are 2 franchise guys, and you build around them. But yeah, that's what has happened to the Vancouver Canucks over the 12 months. That is what I think that they should do going forward. Let me know in the comments. What do you think about the Canucks? What do you think that their answers are? They're in a really rough spot. But again, they have a top 2 defenseman in the entire NHL. Elias Pettersson, when he's on, can be a top 15 player. It's not like they're in some Nashville Predators kind of situation where their guys are absolutely washed and regressing. They're still solid pieces in Vancouver to retool around. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? I'll be seeing the next one. Peace.